And we're live. Hello, this is Little Miss Creepypasta in the Toolbox live stream. And today with me I have got... You can go first, Carrot.
Hello everybody, I'm Carrot. I am rejoining Little Miss Creepypasta on this wonderful little stream called the Toolbox. How are you guys?
And also with me...
Hello everyone, I am Lady Flautist. I hope you all enjoy what you're about to hear.
Yes.
Okay. So, introductions are out the way. That was quite nicely done, actually. You both sound really professional. I'm just like, hey, I'm a person. I do things. I think I just summed up my entire career as a creepypasta narrator. I'm a person. I do things.
Alright, I found my nib.
You found yours? How long is it?
It's not too long. It's the one I just narrated.
Oh, fair enough.
Well, if maybe do you think I should read something else?
You can do whatever you want.
Alrighty.
Then, and you may go first, sir.
Alrighty. Here we go, ladies and gentlemen. It's story time. Remember the Grim Adventures of Billy and Mandy episode? Who Killed Who? In the episode, Mandy retrieves some dice from a house. There is a scene where she meets a woman named Miss Doolin, voiced by Betty White. She is, of course, an elderly woman who converses with Mandy over what Billy had said to her. At the end of the episode, we discover that Miss Doolin actually beat the Grim Reaper in a staring contest. After she and Mandy scared away Billy, Mandy exits the house. Mandy then looks back and discovers that Miss Doolin really was a ghost. In the final scene, we discover from a fortune that Grim knew her for quite a long time and had finally come to reap her soul. What's more unsettling is the fact that Miss Doolin had known Grim for so long, almost as if Grim was her friend throughout her entire life, just like Mandy. Their similarities are quite shocking, no? Just look at how Miss Doolin says she actually beat death, and how many times Mandy constantly wins over Grim in every episode, such as in arguments or situations. Also, if you look at the pendant that Miss Doolin is wearing, you can see that it is in fact a spider. Mandy always had an affinity towards spiders, and showed no fear towards Jeff the Spider. Furthermore, look at how Miss Doolin reacted when Mandy said that Billy didn't allow Mandy to play Who Killed Who, simply because Mandy was a girl. Miss Doolin reacted very violently, but never really stated why. What if she is remembering those exact words when Billy told her all those years ago? It should also be noted that at the very beginning of the show, Mandy could have beaten Grim in a staring contest, but in reality she beat him in a limbo competition. Due to Miss Doolin's old age, she could have confused the staring contest that she had with Billy and the limbo contest that she had with Grim. Mandy could be a very senile old woman who is remembering her childhood memories in the form of Miss Doolin, and she has begun to imagine what she experienced as a child. However, instead of normal people, she remembers monsters, and she is schizophrenic. Have you not noticed how the show progressively gets weirder and weirder? This could be due to the fact that she is slowly losing her mind. But in her imagination, everything that is going on is perfectly ordinary. For example, in Season 6, Episode 10, the plan to force obedience upon Mandy backfires, and Mandy seemingly takes control of the people around her simply by willing them to do so. This points to Mandy being the controller of the world, just like a child playing pretend. It also shows what Mandy will inevitably become, an old woman whose soul shall be reaped by Grim. In her last dying breath, she realizes that Grim had finally won.
Whoa.
Well done. And for
Very
those of you who are
nice.
actually interested, that was actually written by Carrot. So yeah,
Oh, sweet.
not only was that lovely narration by Carrot, it was also a lovely creepypasta by Carrot.
By Carrot, by Carrot. But I only
By
wanted to
Carrot, narrated by Carrot. The
I can read
Creative Vegetable Garden.
Yes, it will be interesting. But I only wanted to read that one because it was in my box, and I was just like, I can't find a creepypasta right now.
Okay, one day, Carrot, you're going to be so famous that people are going to be making like adaptations of your names, and we're going to end up with things like the potato narrating to us.
I've already gotten fan art of me eating a carrot, and I'm just like, cannibalism!
And this is a narration brought to you by Pineapple Kiwi.
Yeah.
This is the root vegetable narrator.
And welcome to the vegetable garden, my children.
Oh my god!
Oh god.
Oh dear.
Welcome to insanity. Here's a carrot. But I'll let you guys go next.
Okay, do you want to go next, or do you want me to do my really long one next?
What story is it?
My one?
Mm-hmm.
He's out there still.
Ooh, I haven't heard that one.
If you want to, I'm not against anything.
Yeah, sure, I'll go then.
Okay.
If you are reading this right now, it is necessary that you get out of your house immediately. I don't know how or why this is happening, but as far as I'm concerned, it's not safe for anyone to be hearing this inside right now. Get in your car, get to the nearest town or city, and read it there. Because I don't know how much longer it is till that thing comes around for you or anyone else. I don't know what this creature is, what it wants, or how many of it exist. All I know is that it is driven to kill and will stop at nothing to make sure it gets its job done. If you fail to follow these directions, at least lock all your doors and windows, turn off the lights, stay somewhere safe, and make sure your presence is not known. Once you've done that, continue listening to this, and I will explain what is happening to the best of my knowledge. One night I was sitting at home, watching TV. It had been a rough week, so I was glad that the weekend finally came. I could sit around doing nothing and not really care about anything. Everything seemed normal, or so I thought. But while I was watching TV, I noticed something odd. Coming out of the forest in my backyard was a man. Well, I'm not exactly sure I could exactly call it that. He was about 5 feet tall, pale white, completely naked, and had very long arms. I mean, very long arms. They were dragging behind him like dead weight, and the way he walked almost made it seem like they were a burden to him. His hands were dragging a very large object behind him that I could not see at the time. As he took each step, I noticed that he walked with a very lumbering motion. Each step seemed to drain the very life out of him. I almost wanted to help, that is, until I saw its face. As it got closer to me, I saw that where its eyes were meant to be, there was nothing but 2 glowing red dots, resting in swollen sockets on his face. He had no nose, and he lacked lips as well. His mouth was stuck in a wide grin, and his teeth were very large. That is to say, if they were teeth, they were more like nails, protruding from his bleeding gums. It had long, jet-black hair that almost touched its waist. The thing paid no attention to me, dragging whatever it was carrying behind it like it was his eternal duty. I could hear his soft panting and saw fog coming from his mouth after each breath, due to the fact that it was the middle of winter. As he began to get closer to the house, I became more and more terrified. I quickly and silently shut off my TV, turned out my lights, and hid in my bedroom upstairs. I looked out my window and continued to watch his actions. During this, the creature had now crossed my long backyard and made it to my house. At this point, I was finally able to see the horrific object it was carrying. In his arms, he was dragging the body of a young man behind him. I couldn't tell what the person looked like. He was too mutilated and torn up for me to be able to distinguish anything human about him. The creature then picked up the body and hung it against the wall with a meat hook, which was already pierced through the man's blood-drenched head. I nearly vomited at the sight of this. The creature walked backwards, stretching out its arms and letting out a subtle yawn. It was as if it had finally completed a very hard task. It walked up onto my back porch, its pace quickening after it had hung up the body. I waited, in silence and terror, the only noise coming from my quickly beating heart pounding against my ribcage. Then it looked up at me, and its smile widened. I jumped back in horror as it stepped closer to my back door. It reached out with its long arms and grabbed a hold of my doorknob. It slowly pushed open my back door and stepped inside. At this point, I was too stunned to do anything but lock my door and move to the corner of my room. I cowered under a blanket like a child and waited in fear. I knew that I was next. I heard it climbing up my staircase, making as little noise as possible. When it reached the top of my staircase, it stopped for a moment, as if contemplating how to mutilate me. Then it grabbed a hold of the doorknob and began to shake it violently. It kept shaking the doorknob, hoping to break in, but to no avail. I heard the creature walk down the stairs and head out my back door. I watched this creature as it slowly slunk back into the forest. I waited for a few minutes in case it came back with some kind of axe to chop down my door. I must have waited in my room for half an hour before I finally decided it was safe. I quickly ran down the stairs and out of my house. I got into my car and I drove out of there as fast as I could. Whatever that creature was, I didn't want to be around when it came back. I went to the nearest town and rented a hotel. I stayed there for the night and I decided I would report the incident to the police in the morning. I wasn't sure they'd believe me, but it was better than getting framed for a murder I didn't commit. The next day I got up and drove to the police station to report the murder to the police. Right as I entered the station, however, I noticed everything seemed too calm. There were no missing person reports, no murder investigations taking place. It's as if the body I'd seen last night had never existed. It might as well be my imagination too, because when I returned home, the body wasn't there. In fact, there was no trace that any of last night's events had happened. It was as if it was a dream. Yeah, that had to be it. It had to have been a dream. I probably just woke up frightened and ran out of my house in a panic. I kept telling myself these things, knowing in my heart they were not true. That night, I locked myself in my room and turned off my lights as soon as it got dark outside. I went to make sure the thing had no idea of my presence. Though it was hard to go to sleep, I finally dozed off. Only for a short time, as I was awoken at around 1 in the morning to the sound of scratching. I sat up in my bed and looked out my window, careful to stay hidden. To my horror, the creature was back, scratching against my wall. It was like it wanted to get my attention. Where I looked at the wall where it had placed the bodies last night, I saw 12 more in their place. Each one was hanging in a different, gruesome way. 2 people hung upside down from barbed wire wrapped around their ankles, others were nailed to the wall. One man was hanging from his own intestines, which had been very precisely removed from his body. I looked away from this terrible sight, waiting for the creature to put me against the wall with the rest of those people. It opened my back door and entered my house, this time quicker, as if it was more eager to add me to his collection. He climbed up the staircase and started shaking on my doorknob. He kept shaking it until it finally snapped and the door slid open. I watched as the monster's silhouette silently crept through my door. It knelt down next to me. At this point I was too stunned to do anything, and I just sat there, waiting for my fate. It placed its hand on my chin and lifted my head up so that I was forced to look into its empty eye sockets. I felt its warm breath against my face, which smelled of blood, and then, to my surprise, it spoke. "Mummy?" It spoke with a slow, raspy voice. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. This creature was calling me its mother, speaking almost like a child saying its first words. I never had a son, and I would know if I did have a son and it looked like this. It almost looked sad while it spoke. "Mummy? Mummy, are you scared, Mummy? Why are you scared, Mummy?" I kept looking up at this creature in horror. What the heck was going on? Did this thing really think I was his mother? I sat in awe and shock at this horrible thing. "Mummy, look outside!" It was as if it was struggling to speak. "I made a gift for you. Do you like it?" I forced myself to look out the window at the horrific artwork the beast laid out for me to see. The thing looked at me for a moment as I contemplated an answer. In a shaky voice I said, "Yes, Mummy does like your gift." Its smile grew with excitement. It put my head down and I watched it slowly leave the room. I sighed with relief and moved away from the doorway. Just as I did, however, the creature turned around and looked at me and said something that still, to this moment, caused me to fear for my life and everyone else's. Its final words to me are the reason I'm getting this message out for everyone. As it left, it said, "I'm not done, Mummy. Stay here. I'm going to get more people." He hasn't returned yet. There you go.
Whoa. That was awesome. Way to go.
Sorry it was such a long one.
I know, it's fine.
But I think we lost Carrot halfway through that. I think he had to go dash.
It's all good. I have a short one. I have a short one to make up.
Go ahead.
Alright. It's a very famous one. I think you'll recognize it. A few years ago, a mother and a father decided they'd need a break, so they wanted to head out for a night on the town. They called their most trusted babysitter. When the babysitter arrived, the two children were already fast asleep. So the babysitter just got to sit around and make sure everything was okay with the children. Later that night, the babysitter got bored and went to watch TV, but she couldn't watch it downstairs because they did not have cable there. So she called them and asked if she could watch cable in the parents' room. Of course, the parents said it was fine, but the babysitter had one final request. She asked if she could cover up the angel statue outside the bedroom window with a blanket or a cloth. It made her nervous. The phone was silent for a moment, and the father who was talking to the babysitter at the time said, "Take the kids and get out of the house. We'll call the police. We don't own an angel statue." The police found both of the children and the babysitter slumped in pools of their own blood. Within 3 minutes of the call, there was no statue ever found. That's it.
Bum bum bum! Sorry, that was really well read.
That's all good.
It was just the dramatic ending. I think we both have just read on to very dramatic endings.
Oh, yes.
Still I'm knocked out.
Let's see, were there any others you wanted to read, or?
Well, we have 3 viewers. I don't know who they are, though. And I accidentally didn't turn on the Q&A before we started, so they'll have to comment if they want to talk to us.
I see.
Usually I'd have other people in here too, but for some reason they seem to be too busy. I'm not upset about it. I feel like I should be upset. I'm just like, I want to cry. It's okay. No, I actually do.
No.
But see, most of the ones I have some really disturbing ones that are really long.
Let's see. The next one I have is about 15 minutes long, and I love this one. I absolutely love it.
What's it called?
It's called The Scarecrow Corpse by Chris Mallory.
Ooh.
It is awesome.
I've got one called Basement Room and The Perfect Child. So those 2 that I have.
I think the basement room I really liked.
Yeah, it's about their holiday home.
I forgot who it was I heard narrated, but they did a really good job.
The Perfect Child comes with lots of warnings on it.
Oh, it's okay. I'm
really, yeah. So I'll read this one, but before I read it. I'm going to...
Yeah? Niv? Is she there? Uh-oh, did I lose her? Maybe she'll get that.
Am I back now? Am I back now?
Woo!
Okay, so I did this every now and then. I accidentally disconnect my mic if I'm in a call.
It's okay.
Okay, so this has some... I want to say child abuse, but it's more... It has infantile murder in it. Just a pre-warning.
Oh, okay.
So
It's
anybody
okay.
listening right now, yeah, that's where this is headed, and I apologize. So obviously this is the whole... If it disturbs you, just feel free to disappear.
It's okay. I'm over 18. But
Exactly.
anyone else?
That's pretty much what I was getting at with the people on the live stream. If you're under 18, you probably should be listening to this one.
Yeah, or if you're oversensitive. If you're
Yeah.
oversensitive or under the age of 18, you may want to take a break.
Yeah, exactly. He was the sweetest child in the world. There was no doubt about it. The moment he was born, people gathered around the nursery, pointing at his sleeping form and crooning. What gorgeous hair, what beautiful lips, what adorable chubby cheeks. Fathers ignored their own newborn children and played with that tiny, perfect baby. Mothers toiled to the glass and pressed tired faces against it, crying for their poor fortune. How much better a life would be if that was their child. The nurse that delivered him was amazed when she first held him in her arms. His skin was creamy white, and not the mottled pink every other baby sported. At first she thought he was dead. His eyes shut and his dark brown curls matted against his skull. As soon as she held him, however, she knew he was just fine. He opened his eyes and looked at her with all the intelligence of an adult, breathing calmly and wrapping his tiny infant fingers around a loose strand of her thin, blonde hair. He never once cried, and his mother worried from her bed, sitting up and crying out at the nurse that so lovingly cradled her child. "My baby, what's wrong with him?" Her voice was weak and her eyes fluttered as she exhaustively fumbled at the bedsheet she was swaddled in. The nurse glared at her over this perfect babe's head and snapped at the woman. There was nothing wrong with this child, and there never would be. Reluctantly, the nurse snipped the child's umbilical cord and set him gently into the nursery, lovingly kissing his head and promising that she would come back for him. Late that night, the nurse quietly tiptoed back into the mother's room, a hospital-issued pillow clutched calmly in her hands. She smothered the mother silently and cleanly, with no one the wiser. The child would be hers no matter what she had to do for it. She would kill 1,000 women to get her hands on that lovely little boy. Swiftly, she crept back into the nursery, bending over the tiny crib that held her angel. Crooning, she told the baby boy stories of how she would love him as he grew, and how well taken care of he would be. The nurse didn't even hear the man sliding into the nursery behind her, a scalpel held firmly in his left hand. She didn't even feel the cold steel slide delicately around her slender throat. She didn't feel the two sides of her skin part cleanly when she gently coaxed by the clean blade. Nor did she feel the slick gush of blood out of her throat as she happily died, her fingertips gently caressing the perfect child's gorgeous face, even in the last throes of death. The man who had so proficiently murdered the nurse stepped over her dying body, a look of absolute adoration plastered on his face. Without a word, he picked the child up into his arms and stole out of the hospital. Behind him, every nurse and doctor in the maternity ward went insane looking for him. It was a serene summer's night outside, warm enough for the man to carry the child back to his apartment, leaving his car and his very pregnant wife back at the hospital he had so deftly escaped from. When he arrived back at his apartment, he did not sleep. Instead, he sat the tiny, beautiful boy on his bed and watched him. For 14 days he watched the child, only moving to feed it and bathe it and give it all the care it needed and more. The babe was the center of his universe. Soon, his wife came home, with a mouthful of angry words to toss at her neglectful husband and a tiny babe of her own to care for. "You left me alone at the hospital to have a baby all on my own, not a word from you. I thought you were dead, Adam." She threw her purse ferociously at her husband, who had yet to even look at her. The baby in the stroller she had been so lovingly attended to before opening the door was left back at the entrance to the apartment. The child inside it, woken by its mother's piercing shrieks. When the mother walked up to kick the man she so suddenly and violently despised, she laid eyes on the most perfect child she'd ever seen. It was a tiny, glowing white child, with huge black eyes, and the most flawless dark curls on the face of the earth. Without hesitation, she leapt towards her weakened, starved husband and choked the last bits of life out of him. Desperate to lay her lips against the child, watching as his face turned increasingly blue and frantic, the tighter she pulled her longing fingers around his neck. Moments later she was on the bed, wrapped as tightly around the darling babe as she could be without harming it. She drank in its warmth, ignoring the increasingly distressed cries of her own child. Soon, irritated beyond belief by her own incredibly flawed child's cries for affection, she took her aggression out on it. Leaping up from the bed as quickly as she could, not wanting to be away from the vision of beauty sleeping serenely on her bed for too long, she picked her child up with one hand, slamming it fiercely against the wall of the apartment until its head was a mashed mess of blood and bone and brain bubbling out, dirtying her hands. The police came knocking on the apartment door not too much longer. Terrified by the vicious noises in the apartment beside them, the family next door had dialed 911, reporting domestic abuse. Cautiously, hands on the guns that rested at their hips, the two police entered the apartment. Upon entering, their noses were assaulted by several awful smells. Rot, death, and the smell of someone who'd been sitting in their own filth for 2 weeks wafted through the air of the stuffy apartment. It didn't take long for the officers to see the destruction that had occurred in this place. The gaunt, dead husband dragged half-heartedly into the hallway, his hair matted with blood. The young officer swayed on his feet, threatening to faint. "Listen, Traducer, I have a pregnant wife at home. I can't do this. I can't get killed in here." His plea was quiet and despondent, but the elder officer simply waved the man forward. They could hear cooing in the bedroom down the hall and stepped over the dead man that lay at the entrance, entered the open door to the room. Immediately upon entering, the elder officer bent down and vomited. The scene that met his eyes was too much for even someone as experienced as him to handle. Blood was smeared on the wall where a dead baby, lying there on the floor, its head smashed a mess, had been mercilessly beaten. On the bed was a chubby woman, obviously the woman who had borne and murdered the baby. Cradled in her arms, pressed firmly against a swollen breast, was a naked, rotten baby, its skin blue and its mouth puffed up with death. She was whispering to it sweetly, the most contented look on her face. The younger officer, however, was calm. It was clear what he must do. That woman held an angel, and he wanted it. Such a perfect child had never existed. The decision was easy to make. Pulling out his gun quickly, he shot the woman once in the head, delighting in the explosion of gorgeous crimson that fanned out behind her. The younger man's companion turned, a look of confusion on his face. Immediately, he was met with 2 bullets to the left eye. Smiling, the younger man watched his friend slide back against the door into its already bloodied wall behind him. That baby would be his, and no one would stop him from taking it now. And that is The Perfect Child.
Whoa. Damn.
And now you know why I did the big warning thing at the beginning.
Yeah.
It's not particularly a pleasant story, let's put it that way.
Yeah. Damn. Should I go ahead and do mine?
Mm-hmm.
Alrighty. Okay, The Scarecrow Corpse by Chris Mallory. The following testimony was emailed to me recently by an old friend. I haven't heard back from her, but I hope she's okay. As you know, I'm in, or was, in training to be a coroner. My education was almost complete, and I had been working a paid internship with a well-known medical examiner in the Washington, D.C. area. All that changed a few hours ago when I was fired from the office for refusing to participate in what I believe to be a cover-up. Even though they warned me about consequences for leaking any information about this case, my conscience wouldn't be clear if I kept quiet. This is something people need to know. A few days ago, we received a call from the Metro Police about a possible body discovered on the Red Line. Since working here, we've responded to a few calls in the subway system. The first time, it was a woman who tripped over someone's rolling suitcase while trying to simply pass by on the escalators. She ended up with a broken neck. Twice we went out there for a heart attack, and once for a late-night mugging that went really bad. The poor guy was stabbed repeatedly in the stomach, even though he handed over his watch and wallet like the mugger requested. So far, I haven't seen anything especially gory, and it was a bit of a letdown when the dispatch officer said the man was just found sitting on the train. Is it wrong that I've been looking forward to a call about someone either jumping or being pushed in front of a train? The interesting thing about the wording of the dispatch request was possible body. If the word possible is in front of body, maybe it's the paramedics that should be responding and not the coroner's office. When we arrived, the paramedics actually were on the scene, so we figured it was just a miscommunication and we were called out prematurely. Police tape blocked off the entire entrance station platform. From our view at the top of the escalators, we could tell something wasn't right. The paramedics stood outside the door to the train car, and they weren't actually doing anything except arguing and pointing at a body slumped up against a window inside. We could have left, but since it was a slow evening, we decided to take a look anyway, just to see what was going on. As we approached, I overheard some of the conversation between the two paramedics. "He's dead, right?" said the older of the two. "Dead people don't do that." Do what? I thought. Once they saw us, they quickly agreed that the man was dead and promptly let the scene to us. Clearly this wasn't a call they wanted to handle. I can understand that. The police weren't much help either. I chatted with one of the officers on the scene while the doctor went in to look at the man on the train. One of the detectives commented that there weren't any clear signs of foul play. The witnesses all claimed that the guy just sat down like everyone else and then he stopped breathing. Natural causes, I thought, seemed like a pretty cut and dry case, but when I looked over my shoulder at the doc, he seemed confused. "Look at this," he said to me as I walked into the train. As I approached, it seemed like the man was just napping, like a lot of train riders do when they know their stop won't be coming up for a while. "Look at what?" I asked. "His eyes." The man's head was forward with his chin to his chest, so that I had to kneel down to get a good look at his face. As I'm doing this, the doc is talking out loud, like he tends to do, just going over his mental checklist. Not breathing, no pulse, his skin is cold to the touch, approximate time of death, 6 to 8 hours ago. I'm in the aisle of the train, trying to make do with a pin flashlight since the dim lighting on the train wasn't helping things much. The man's eyes were open and they seemed to be staring at me. It's not uncommon, so I lean in closer, hoping to figure out what it is the doc wanted me to see so that I don't look like an idiot. And then he blinked. I jumped back as quickly as a mongoose would jump away from a cobra. "What the fuck?" I tried to say. "Exactly," said the doctor. "It gotta be a muscle spasm, right?" "You would think, but watch this," he says. He grabs the guy by the hair and pulls his head back. With his other hand, he waves a finger in front of the man's open eyes, which then begin to follow along as the doctor moves his finger left and right. Then the man looked at me again and blinked. "Have you ever seen anything like this before?" I ask. "Nope." "And he's dead?" "As a doornail." We let the officer in charge know that we couldn't determine the cause of death on site. A full autopsy would need to be performed to make any kind of determination. She made a note in the report that this body had a tendency to follow you with its eyes and occasionally blink. Off the record, she told me the whole case bothered her. The man, she said, didn't have any identification, credit cards, watch, jewelry, a phone, or even money. All they found on him was a train ticket and a napkin. Once we had him back at the office, we changed into our examination coveralls. I was asked to deal with his clothing. The man watched me the whole time as I stripped off his business suit. He even winked at me once. Also, a few odd things were noted about the clothing. First, he wasn't wearing any undergarments. Normally, people wear a t-shirt, boxers, or briefs and socks. This guy wore none of those things, but for some reason, he had on two belts, one over the other. The doc switched on his tape recorder and then turned on the buzzsaw. I watched as he performed the Y incision, and I made a mental note of his perfect technique so that I could try and do it better next time. I'm telling you, the doc is a real artist. Next came the enjoyable cracking sound as the ribcage was pried open. While this was happening, the man's eyes watched us. I could almost swear he was smiling too. Over the next hour, the doc made notes as he did the exam. He handed me each organ to be weighed and catalogued. There was nothing strange or out of the ordinary about any of the internal organs. Okay, the doc said. Let's take a look inside his head. I want to see what's causing the eye movement. Listen, do you mind if we tape the eyes shut first? I tried to remain as professional as I could, but the constant blinking unnerved me. The doc didn't mind, so I took some suture tape and worked up the courage to manually close the guy's eyelids and tape them down. Immediately, they started moving fast. His whole face was convulsing and contorting itself, trying to break free from the tape. I don't think he likes that, the doctor said, and then he removed the tape from the man's eyes. The violent motions stopped right away, and the man winked at the doc. This isn't natural, I said. There's a scientific reason for everything. It's our job to find it, the doctor replied. But he actually fought to get the tape off his eyes. I guess he wants to watch. Now, do you want to remove the skull, or should I? I'm too shaken to handle the equipment, so I watch as the doc works the saw around the man's skull. The bastard is smiling. I'm sure of it. He's staring at me and blinking his left eye, then his right eye, back and forth. I hear the familiar popping sound caused by the top of a skull being pulled off. Whoa. Okay, the doctor says. What is it? I ask as I'm walking around to see what he's seeing. The man's eyes follow me, of course. I think I may have to call this one in. Dear God. The brain was missing. Doc? I ask. Not now. Pack him and go home. I'll finish cleaning this up. He's saying this as he's already dialing a number on the phone. What? But just go. I'll call you later. It isn't a request. I know when to shut up and listen. I make my way to the door knowing that the man is still staring at me. And don't say anything to anyone! The doc never called me back. Each time I tried to reach him, it went to voicemail. I tried to go back the next day. Security wouldn't let me in the building. They said I was to await further instructions while on paid leave. That, all that, was 4 days ago. This morning I hear a knock at my door. It's a man who says he was with the medical examiner's office. But he looks as if he's with the CIA, FBI, NSA, or some other three-letter agency. He asks if he can come in to talk. I open the door and let him in. As I do, I notice two other similarly dressed men sitting in a black Suburban across the street. The folder he hands me is a case file for the John Doe that was found on the train. All of the notes about the eye movement and the blinking were removed. There was no mention of anything out of the ordinary, let alone a missing brain. It's already got the doc's signature on it, and this man is asking for me to sign it as well. I tried to tell him the file is wrong, but he holds up a hand to stop me from speaking. This is how it happened. Sign it, he said. I ask about the doc. I want to know why I haven't heard from him. He says the doc has been let go. The way he says it makes me think the worst. I refuse to sign it and ask to speak with the director of the medical examiner's office. The man informs me that would be impossible and that I'm to be fired. But fired isn't the word he used. The word he used was terminated. He leaves when I ask him to go, but he warns me that mentioning this to anyone would have serious consequences. As soon as the door closed behind him, I packed a bag and took off. I saw that a black Suburban was parked at the end of my street, and I might just be paranoid, but I think it pulled out after I did. Just in case I was being followed, I changed directions several times. When I felt it was safe enough, I pulled into a nearby residential neighborhood and found an open Wi-Fi signal. I think something strange is going on in DC, maybe elsewhere as well. I don't know what it could be, but I feel like the doc and I stumbled onto something we weren't supposed to know about, and now we're in danger. I found the doc's home phone online, but when I tried to call, it went straight to voicemail. I tried to leave a message for him, but the line went dead once I began talking. If someone is monitoring my phone calls, it's possible my car is bugged too, and I already know exactly where I am. Again, maybe I'm just paranoid, or crazy. Maybe there is a completely logical explanation for the scarecrow corpse that stares and blinks and winks and smiles. I can't imagine how anything like that could exist or why. I'm scared. Really, really scared. I decided the only thing best to do would be to write this and email it out to everyone I know. Hopefully, this information will make it to someone. If you've received this and haven't heard back from me by tomorrow, then I'm probably dead, and you'll know what I've written is true. And that was the Scarecrow corpse. Niv, you there?
Done. Is my mic working? Well done. You actually read that really well.
Thank you.
I mute when people are narrating, so that's why it took me a little bit of time to go back.
Thank you. I'm glad you liked it.
Ooh, have you read the comment underneath?
The comment? No, I haven't. I don't exactly know how to get there.
Oh, it says it is possible that this individual had his brain surgically removed and that his caretaker abandoned him on the train because they did not want to take care of him.
Oh, that's sad.
Hmm.
Woo! Yeah, I love that one. Oh, that story is definitely one of my favorites. Did you have one more, or?
No, I think that's actually it. There was
Awesome.
supposed to be like 4 or 5 of us in the thing, so it was going to run like an hour, but we're just 2 of us. It's ran to 40 minutes, which is quite impressive in its own sense.
Sweet.
Yeah. So we're probably going to cut it off here because we haven't actually got any questions asked, unless there's anything you want to say before we go anywhere.
Okay.
Was there anything you wanted to say?
Wait, I'm sorry. Could you repeat that? I didn't quite get that.
Is there anything you want to say?
I hope you guys enjoyed the stories, and well, have fun, be safe, and keep your ears open.
And do you want to say your channel name just so they can find you?
Oh yeah, sure. It is Lady Flautist. If you don't know how to spell that, that's Flautist.
There you go. And that is the live stream done. So I'm gonna stop broadcasting, and that is Niv out. Leaders.